I work night shift at a rural vet clinic. What this kid brought in is not an animal. Last summer, some Czech tourists brought in a lynx, found it passed out on the side of the road, and didn't notice the tranquilizer darts sticking out of its back. They just thought, cute kitty, and Googled the nearest clinic. They didn't know it was a lynx, and, to be completely accurate, they didn't really bring it to the clinic. They managed to get their car into our driveway before the wild animal woke up, scratched them to shit, and then made a glorious escape through the car window. Animal control never recovered the lynx, but then again, they didn't try too hard. There's only 8 police officers in our town. I know all of them, if not by first name, then certainly by last. When I called in after the lynx incident, I was mainly calling so we could share a laugh over how dumb tourists can get. I've worked in vet care for almost a decade now, and that was the only time I ever had to contact the authorities. Until tonight. Tonight, I'll have to call them again, and they'll have to call for backup from Poprad and just about any other city that can spare the men. Tonight, I'll have to call the cops again, and there will be no laughter. Night shifts at the clinic are never busy. Most of our clientele are folks out in the villages. They know their animals well enough to not require midnight help, and even if there is an emergency, they are unlikely to ride the hilly roads after sundown. Most of my night shift work revolves around restocking, admin stuff, and keeping an eye on any overnight patients we have. It's been a slow week. The paperwork I had to manage got knocked out in 15 minutes, and there was no need to restock anything. Our sole overnight visitor, a prize pig from one of the nearby villages recovering from a skin infection, was doused out on meds and gave no indication of waking up for the next 12 hours. When it started storming outside, I got comfortable with the idea of spending the night alone. The winding roads beyond our town are dangerous in the dark. When they get wet, they turn deadly. As the rain started to tap on our tin roof and thunder rumbled beyond the valley, I rested my head on the desk for a little catnap. I was pried from my sleep by the shrill cry of the buzzer. Standing outside of the clinic, right beneath the rainwater pouring from the roof, stood a red-haired teenage boy. His rusted-up bike was leaned up against the door. In his hands, he held an old milk crate. I was still half asleep when I got to the door. Barely understood what the kid was talking about. He was manic. He pushed the crate into my hands and assured me that the animal that was inside was good and that I should look after it. He also said that people would come looking for it and that I shouldn't give it away because it's a good animal. The kid was in a state of shock. I was drowsy enough to be calm. When I asked him to come inside of the clinic and explain the situation more clearly, the teen backed out into the rain. His eyes kept on drifting towards our security camera. He kept repeating that the animal in the box was good. There was a phlegmy purring sound coming from inside the crate. Just as I registered it, the kid hopped up on his bike and drove off into the storm. The interaction was strange, but I was drowsy enough for everything to feel strange. I called after him, asking for some form of contact information, but his scrawny shape quickly disappeared into the night. With the strained purring sound urging me on, I grabbed the crate and brought it into the operating room. I expected a cat. Potentially a cat that got hit by a car. When I took off the lid of the crate, however, I witnessed something incomprehensible. My shriek woke up the pig. From inside its cage, the big creature's eyes looked up, blinked once, twice, and then receded back into their drug-fueled sleep. The prize pig drifted off, but I was wide awake. I was terrified. The creature that lay in the box was unlike anything I had ever come across in my studies. It looked, vaguely, like a cat. It looked like a cat, but it had 6 legs and scaly skin, and there was a messy growth of grass on its back. The creature was patently unnatural, but once the shock of its visage wore off, my instincts kicked in. The animal's paws were twitching. Its slitted eyes were struggling to stay open. The creature was clearly in great discomfort. Even though I was looking down at a being wholly outside the realm of natural biology, my instincts kicked in. The scaly body was heaving in delirium and warm to the touch. Whatever the creature on the table was, it was running a fever. After getting confirmation from a thermometer, I readied an antipyretic and injected the creature in one of its paws. Moments after I pressed in the syringe, the sickly purring stopped and the animal's breathing calmed. Seeing the creature's condition improve didn't calm me. Once the instincts that drove me to treat it dissipated, the animal's incomprehensible form took over my mind again. I didn't know what to do. None of the folks I work with would be awake, and even if they were, they would be none the wiser with how to proceed. I knew my co-workers wouldn't be of any help, but being alone with a strange being was not something I could handle. As the cat creature rested on the operating table, I ran over to the lobby to grab my phone. When I came back into the operating room, the strange animal was still unconscious, but something about it had changed. The growth on its back, the strange mixture of flowers and stalks, it no longer looked wilted. Slowly, as the thing took long, deep breaths, the greenery on the creature's spine started to shift. I called my boss. I prayed that he would pick up and shed some light on why there was a six-legged cat being in our operating room, but the phone stayed dumb. In an effort to convince myself that what I was seeing was indeed real and not the product of some fugue state, I swiped over to the camera app and snapped a picture. The photo was clear. What I saw on the screen was just as discomforting as what I saw in the flesh. I stared at my phone, trying to make sense of what was happening, but soon enough my attention was gripped away. Taking the picture had woken up the creature. Cautiously, and with some visible discomfort, the cat thing rose to its paws. Its eyes were a lightish brown hue and slitted like those of a goat. The thing stared at me. I stood there frozen, unable to understand whether the animal meant me harm. The creature itself did not move, yet the growth on its back shivered and grew. A bulbous mass, rose-like in structure, started to bloom on the animal's back. Green tendrils, like cautious tentacles, wiggled their way out of the cat creature's rose. The appendages moved slowly and suggested no threat, yet with each breath the being took, they expanded further. One of them bumped up against the metal tray and sent it clattering to the floor. The crash didn't startle the creature much, but it woke up the sleeping pig. Once again, the drowsy eyes looked up at me from the cage. They blinked once, twice, and looked as if they were to close again, yet then they saw the cat creature. With unrestrained terror, the prize pig started to squeal. It threw its heavy body back and forth in the cage in a desperate attempt to avoid the sight of the reptilian cat. No tranquilizers could suppress the swine's fear. The six-legged creature did not like the pig either. The moment that the squealing started, the reptilian cat leaped off the operating table towards the high shelves. Without knocking down any of the supplies, it crawled its way over to one of the air vents, dislodged the cover, and crept inside. The discomforting creature disappearing didn't calm down the pig. I was just as shaken by the strangeness of the creature, but I didn't have any fresh stitches. Seizing my instincts, I bent down to the pig to try to calm it. That's when I first heard the buzzer. The sound was mere background to me. I was focused on calming the pig. It wouldn't stop squealing and throwing its body around. It's when I decided that the pig needed an injection that I heard the buzzer again. It was followed up by the sounds of shattered glass. The front door had been knocked out. Someone was inside of the clinic. I left the squealing pig behind and made my way towards the lobby. Perhaps it was wishful thinking, but in that moment, I thought it was the teen who had dropped off the strange creature in the first place that broke through the door. It didn't occur to me that the visitors might be dangerous or mean me harm. It should have. In the lobby they stood, towering and dumb, all dressed in village garb. There were 3 of them, and they only differed in the clothes they wore. Each of them held a shotgun or a rifle. The moment they saw me, all their weapons had a single target. They didn't speak. No matter how much I pleaded with them to tell me what was happening, they didn't utter a word. Instead, they ordered me around with their rifles. One of the bull giants pointed me towards the edge of the lobby, whilst the other 2 went over to the operating room to investigate. The man left with me stared in my direction, but seemed to be looking past me. There was very little life in his eyes. He was deaf to all my pleas. Off beyond the lobby, I could hear the prize pig squealing in horror. It did not squeal for long. A shotgun blast turned the animal silent, As if the shotgun was a starter pistol for the race of my life, I started to beg for forgiveness again. I told the bald giant that I would run away, that I would never tell anyone what I saw, that I would forget the whole night. His eyes stared past me, and his weapon didn't shift. From the surgery, one of the other bald giants emerged. He still wore a scowl on his face that suggested a desolate inner life, but his rifle was slung across his back. In his hands, he was holding a photograph, a six-legged reptilian cat. The giant shoved the photograph in my face and gestured wildly. He opened and shut his mouth in an attempt to speak, but he couldn't. He had no tongue. He had no teeth. The inside of his mouth was just a cavern of wet flesh. Past my terror, I tried explaining what happened with the teen that showed up earlier that night. Both the giants were deaf to my words. The gun was still being aimed at me. The photograph was still being shoved in my face. No matter what I said, the giants remained threatening and deadly. In the air ducts above, I could hear something rustle. The giants didn't look up. When another shotgun blast sounded off from the clinic, however, they both turned around. In that brief moment of inattention, I desperately wanted to run away and call for help. My legs, however, would not budge. When the few seconds of distraction passed, the giant with the photograph grabbed his rifle and set off to the surgery. The other man's dead stare turned back to me, as did his gun. Off in the surgery, metal trays came crashing to the ground. Another gunshot went off, then another. Then the room went quiet. The bald giant's rifle was still pointed at me, but the man's hands were shaking. His eyes kept on drifting off to the side, searching the hall which led to the surgery for movement. The bald giant was hoping for his comrade to re-emerge, but he did not. What came from around the corner shot panic across the bald giant's dull eyes. Like the tentacles of some horrid sea beast, the vines emerged from the hall. When I first saw them extend from the cat creature's back, they swayed like tree branches in gentle wind. Now they moved like whips. With a crack, the slick tendrils wrapped around the giant's wrists and sent him crashing to the ground. The tiling cracked beneath the impact of the man's skull. He struggled, but it was worthless. Soon, two more tendrils emerged to grab a hold of his kicking legs. With a trail of blood springing from his forehead, the bald giant was dragged around the corner. He howled in a terrible low tone. His pained, tongueless shrieks rose in manic notes until, finally, they whimpered out. From the hallway, I could hear the sound of a full bucket being emptied. Before I found the bravery to go look into the hallway, trickles of crimson seeped around the corner. The prize pig lies mutilated in its cage, barely recognizable. Metal bars twist around the impact site, a gruesome testament to the shot that ended its life. But the pig isn't the only victim. The three giants who stormed my clinic have met a fate far worse than death. Calling what happened to them killed is an understatement, a lie to comfort the mind. They are torn apart, obliterated. The hallway and surgery room are transformed into a slaughterhouse, painted in deep red, littered with fragments of flesh and shattered bones. The scene is a grotesque puzzle of human remains, unidentifiable pieces of what used to be people. The cat creature is gone as well, the window flung open, curtains gently dancing in the dying storm. I pray it never returns, that it disappears into the night, just like the lynx from last summer. All that is left now is to call the cops. This time, there will be no laughter, no shared joke about foolish tourists or strange occurrences. When the authorities arrive, they won't just find the aftermath of some tragic accident. They'll find a massacre, something unexplainable, something that will haunt them for the rest of their lives.